I like it when you say it live in your Aussie accent. We're live.
We're live.
Hey, all right. Hey, everyone. It's Design Unfiltered 9. So IX officially. Welcome, everybody, to the stream. It's me, Joanne Weaver, Jared Treadley, Erica Fortgang, all three experienced design recruiters. And we're so excited to announce our special guest, Melissa Cullens, who's with us today.
Yay.
And yay! She's an award-winning design leader with 24 years of experience building products, brands, and teams that people love. Her work has been recognized by Interbrand and Fast Company for innovation. I didn't know this about you. She holds a patent in financial technology for her insights around women and money. Awesome. As well as a byline in the Dove Medical Journal for her work to understand and support people living with chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
She now runs her own design studio and writes the blog On Purpose, which is awesome. You should totally subscribe.
Amazing.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
A weekly publication exploring what it means to live well in a world obsessed with work. And professionally, she was the former CXO at Elvest, and most recently was the head of design at Clearing, which is a chronic pain startup. And now she's off doing her own thing and doing amazing things. So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. It's so fun to be here with you people. Some of my favorite people in the world. So how better to spend an afternoon?
Oh, I love that.
Yay.
Nice.
And I love that you keep it real. Like your newsletter is so great. I remember this one newsletter you sent out about apple picking in the Hudson Valley with your family. And you're like, oh, this is supposed to be super fun. And, take the kiddo and like, this is going to be great. And you're just like, it sucked. I just love that. I was like, everybody's like, oh, it's such an idyllic, adventure to go apple picking. And you're just like, this was really hard.
It was not fun. And you're looking around and you're seeing everybody and they've all got that like Sears catalog outfit look on. And like the mom's like batting away all of the applesauce and the goodies and trying to like keep everybody looking good. And it's just like, nobody's having fun. Everybody's stressed out. And then you're going to go and you're going to do it again, because you think you're supposed to. And it's kind of this classic example of something I saw again and again in the research. So for On Purpose, one of the things that I learned in the process, so I, like you said, like ladder, climbed as hard, as fast as I could to get as far up. I was on the cover of a magazine. Like it was insane. I couldn't believe that this was happening to me. And then I hit a brick wall. And there just wasn't enough enthusiasm and excitement and security and safety from hitting all of those different milestones to kind of keep you going. At a certain point, you just kind of ask yourself, well, what's it all for? Where is this taking me? We had the pandemic. I think so many of us started asking that question. And I wanted to understand what had happened to me, that I had taken that mentality and that obsession with success and achievement, not just in that job, but in every other job that I'd ever had. And I had managed to make myself really, really miserable in so many places. And so this phenomenon where like you kind of keep doing things that you hate because you think that this time it's going to be different is a really common pattern that I've found in this research I've been doing, where I've been interviewing folks about, tell me about your work. Why do you do what you do? What are your goals for success? What does work mean to you? And so much of the time I really find that we really struggle to know what we actually want. Culture is very good at giving us a template of what things are supposed to look like and all of the things that we're supposed to achieve. And we get those things and like, it feels really good for a second. And then, it's like a fart in the wind, it's just gone. And so you're on to the next. So I've tried to make more of a practice of asking that question on a regular basis. Like, how does this make me feel? Is this work worth it? Is the effort worth it? Or the people that I'm working for, do they appreciate? Because it's not just in our professional lives, it's in our personal lives too. There's no shortage of work to be done.
That's true.
So that's great. And what's your advice? Because I think a lot of people can relate to what you just said. What's your advice for somebody from like practical, actionable things they can do if they're finding themselves stuck? They're like, oh, I think I'm on this hamster wheel and I think I'm going for the next thing, but it doesn't actually make me feel good. Or maybe I'm stuck in this relationship that doesn't feel good. Like, what do you suggest for people that are stuck? What are some things they can do?
I think that, like, for number one, first of all, we're all stuck most of the time. So
word?
I think there's a little bit of like, at least for me anyway, I don't know if you guys identify with this. There used to be this drive of like, okay, I can perfect it. I can stop the bad things from happening by working really hard, by buying the right stuff, by having the right achievements, by having the right things in my life. I will insulate myself from difficulty. But the truth is, and we know this is just, true. Really wealthy people have bad things happen to them too. There's no way to put the fence up high enough that it's not going to come in a little bit from time to time. So I think the first thing is just like, don't feel so bad about feeling stuck. Like feeling stuck is a normal thing. It's going to come and go no matter what thing it is that you're doing. There's not going to be something that you get to at some point that's going to take that feeling away. But if you're feeling stuck right now, then the question comes back to starting to really pay attention to how you feel throughout the course of the day. What I've found in most of the jobs that I've had is there's this kind of point where it's bad for a day, and then it's bad for a week, and then it's bad for a month, and then it's bad for 3 months. And then you just kind of get really used to it being kind of awful. And you put your hopes on something in the future. Maybe it's a new team or a new project or a new position or even a new job. And you think that's going to be the thing that's going to fix it. But how long is it going to be? How many days and weeks and months are you going to live in misery until you get that next thing in the future that's going to fix it? And it probably isn't, right? It's going to come with its own problems. And so the real art is actually trying to focus as much as you can on the time that you have in the day right now and try and make that time as good as you possibly can. So something I do with some of the folks I work with is I actually make them keep a diary for a week of every single mood that you have over the course of a week. And you start to notice what are the conversations that really like drain my energy and pull me down. When are the moments that I feel really in flow? And is there a difference for me in terms of like, in some of my leadership roles, for example, I'll often feel really helpful or really useful, but I may not experience a ton of flow, right? And so that is an indication that that's a really important thing to me. I need that kind of creative aspect of my life, that like making aspect. I may not be able to get it in a leadership job. So that means that I have to make sure that I'm getting it somewhere else, that part of my cup is not, I'm not only looking to work to fill that part of my life, that I'm thinking about my life kind of more as like a portfolio of things. And work is one of 6 or, however many different life areas that I'm thinking about as something that I want to cultivate as a whole. So maybe that means that I, sign off a little early, go down to the basement and paint for a while. Find ways to cut into it if you need to cut into it in the workday, and find ways outside if you can. But just really kind of having that good relationship with asking yourself all the time, okay, well, how does this feel? How does this feel? How does this feel? And it becomes a muscle over time, and you start to get a little bit better at identifying something more quickly. And it's like, oh, like, ugh, that doesn't work for me. I need to make a change.
Yeah.
With some of that, just to like sort of circle it to, I know that you've been a design leader for many years and built teams and hired some phenomenal designers as well. And I always think part of that role as that design leader is just design culture, which is the broadest thing you could possibly say. But with what you've just said in mind and an individual listening to themselves and trying to be in tune with when they're feeling those things, what things have you done as a design leader to help the designers in your team, I guess, get in tune with that first, but then support it too, like signing off early or creating space for them, or how have you gone about that or seen that realized in some of the teams?
I think our work is some of the hardest because when you create art commercially, which is what we do, there is a part of you that goes into that work, and it's tough not to get attached to your idea, and it's tough not to feel like this thing that I've made is a part of me. And so when you put feedback on this thing that I've made, that you're giving feedback to me as a person. And so one thing that I do with my team members is I do as much as I can to help give some separation between who you are and what the work is. And so that means that like I make a regular practice of checking in to make sure what else are you doing in your life? Like, this cannot be the only thing that you're interested in. It cannot be the only focus, because as soon as I see somebody getting really having a really tough time, it's usually because there's a lot of expectation about me as an individual and my worth starting to get associated with the work. And there's no controlling other people.
Yeah.
They like it or they don't, and they're paying us to do it. So we kind of have to have enough freedom from their opinion to not take it back. And so that's something that I really try and help folks in the teams develop, is like, first of all, I know for sure when we work together that your job is one of the things that you do. It's not the only thing that you do. And I anticipate that you and I are going to work off of that kind of shared assumption that I want you to do work you're proud of. I want you to do work that you want to have in your portfolio. I want you to do work that's going to do well for the business, because that's going to be good for you too. But it can't be your whole world.
One and the same. Yeah. I just feel like we're in a little bit of a climate right now of many people that are maybe fortunate to still be a designer in a company, for example. It's do more with less, so even when you try to, even if maybe you don't have a design leader that is creating enough space or doesn't have the same mentality as what you've described, you as the individual, as the designer in that team, you've got to find a way to maybe create boundaries to give yourself that space. And I just think it's really challenging at the moment, because there is this feeling or this expectation of do more with less, like everything's go, or, even when a company is hiring at times, you feel from them this expectation of, are you gonna give yourself to us? We're a startup and we only want to hire those who pledge allegiance to the dying day,
I mean, I have been the sort of person who is like ready to sign my firstborn over. And so I know, both as like a leader and as a worker, like if I could just speak to the hiring managers out there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, please. Okay, hiring managers, listen to this now.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't need someone to love your company like it's their baby for them to do a good job. And especially when you're working with a team that does not have the same stakes involved as you do, it's not fair to ask for it. And they feel that unfairness, and they feel it every time you ask. And so what happens is you are eroding the trust with that person, because there is this kind of constant dissonance between what you believe is important for the organization and what they believe is realistic, based off of the fact that they're an employee who you pay in exchange for a service. Now, I thought that giving my whole 100 and bazillion % of myself was going to be the way that I did great work. And I can tell you that I did worse work, and I was a worse manager when that was my mindset. And that's what I asked for from my team. One of the big changes I made when I moved to Clearing was to really start to prioritize the people that I was working with, not just my team, but I prioritized everybody in the organization as equals and collaborators who were all here to do a job, and to try and reduce as much of that friction of like feeling like there's never enough. It is tough, but you do have to prioritize, right? Like that's the work of the management and the leadership team, is to kind of make sure that your team can focus on the stuff that's the most important and deliver excellence to you. Because that's what everybody wants, to do a good job. Nobody wants to like slack off. And, I mean, maybe some people do, but like not most people, so we just have to make it possible for them to do it. And that comes down to being really honest about the power dynamic, really honest about the relationship and what it means, and that is transactional on a level.
Yeah.
Like it's not a family relationship. Your family can't fire you. I'd like to sometimes, but
Yeah. So in terms of, and by the way, everybody who's tuning in, please feel free to like leave your comments. Like we see some questions coming in. So Deanna, Nikki, Alan, Sarah, thank you so much for posting your comments. And please post comments as we're talking. Ask questions. We'll get to them at the end of the session. So as you think of them, just put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end. So you're saying some great things about how you treat your team and how you think about work and how you want your team to think about work. Maybe you could describe to us how you hire. Like, what do you look for Like when people are sending in their resume and portfolio in an email, like what is it that you hire and what are the things that make you more interested versus less?
Absolutely. Well, I think one thing to know is that you're always hiring for the team, not just the role, right? So you have a certain job description that you put out into the world because you have a certain vision in mind for like a problem the company needs to solve. And so if you're a person coming in, that's kind of your job, is to market yourself as a solution for the company problem and to kind of demonstrate how your skills and expertise line up well against whatever the business is trying to accomplish. And like, here's kind of how I can help you do this. So if you can do a good job of communicating that and kind of telling me a story about like, oh, here's, either a similar problem that I have solved, or here's an example of something where I can at least demonstrate like really good critical thinking, or I can demonstrate, I look for people who don't just take down like this is the thing and go execute it. I look for people who ask really good questions. And who can demonstrate excellent collaboration. Like our work is cross-functional. We work with every single person in the organization. A lot of people don't know what we do. So you have to be I think nice is not the word, but you have to be compassionate for the people that you work with. You have to come in with an open mind and an expectation that they don't know what you do. And you can't be mad about it, and expect the fact that like, you probably don't know a lot about what they do too. And that's kind of the point, is like together so I'm looking for people who can do that. I'm looking for people who can show how they've worked to bring an entire org together to achieve a goal, not just as an individual. I'm also looking for you to show me why your work made a difference for the people that you're selling to, and whether that's a B2B or a direct to consumer product. Like, it's important to be able to highlight like, okay, well, like this is the behavior of a person. I look to see, do you understand the difference between what someone says and what they mean? That's probably like the most important thing as a designer, both with your internal stakeholders and with your customers.
How about in terms of like, how do you decide who to interview? Like when you're looking at portfolios and resumes, just for them to even get their foot in the door. Like what advice would you give?
Oh my God.
So hard.
It's so hard. It takes an inordinate amount of time, first of all. So you have to think of your portfolio and your resume, and this is like not new advice, but your marketing, right? So like if you've ever worked on a marketing website, how are you getting my attention and telling me that you can help me in the first 3 seconds that I look at your book? It's got to be beautiful, or at the very least it has to be like well presented and clear. And I tell you, the one thing that just makes me shut down is like paragraphs and paragraphs of text. If you give me something that's going to make me, I've got to like go get a bottle of water to sit and read it. Just, you don't want the laptop closed moment, right? Like, oh, that looks like work. I don't want to do that. It looks like work. And I know there's probably great people that I've looked at their books and I just haven't had time to go through the detail. And I know that's so hard. God, there's nothing worse than working on your portfolio. I hate it. It's awful. But got to do it.
Yeah.
It is the only way that someone knows something about you, right? You're a stranger until that point, and you're trying to, in those few seconds you've got, give a quick, succinct kind of message. Is that, and when you talk about avoiding a lot of that big text, like very practically, it is a succinct story. It flows. It's quick to ingest. Maybe it's split up between imagery, some hierarchy. Like it just it guides you versus you trying to figure out what's what. Yeah.
And who you are as a person a little bit too. And like, I don't mean so much that, you have a dog and you like strawberry ice cream, but kind of like what you bring to the table as a member of an organization and a member of a team. Like, what are your strengths? And then can you use your portfolio and your book as a way to demonstrate that? A design team is a team of an incredibly diverse group of people. I noticed there's a comment in here from Alan that it's tough for neurodiverse folks to be able to always know that difference between what someone says and what someone means. And it's a great point. And not everybody on the team needs to be able to do that, right? Like there's lots of different, it's like a soccer team, right? There's a spot for everybody on the field. So I need to see your skills and kind of your unique capacities as best you can show me. Like, this is what I do. This is how it's different from what other people do. And this is why you want me specifically on your team.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a good conversation with Ariel Julie in our last Design Unfiltered, who is a design recruiter. She's been at Zillow and Slack and great places, Pinterest. And she was also echoing the fact that like brevity is key. She's like, if I just need to digest it really quickly, like 2 or 3, sentences, something just really, really quick. And also just like what makes you different? Like, because there's such a glut of candidates in the market, how do you stand out above the crowd? So I think she was telling the story about like, oh, there's like a piano playing designer, like just something that's memorable, that's just going to stick with you. And so I often ask people when I'm doing intake with them, like, what is your superpower? Like, what makes you different than other designers that you know or that you've heard about? What do you hear in your performance reviews all the time? Like, what do people tell you that's kind of like, oh, that makes me feel good? And maybe not everybody's hearing that. So just to lead with like, what is your difference? Because there's so many people in the market.
Absolutely.
I think, Melissa, I feel like what stands out to you sometimes is personality in someone's work too. That it both stands out. It's telling you what they do work-wise, but there's something in there that's a bit personable, or they're sharing some personality about it. And I sometimes think people forget that maybe in when they're so focused on trying to present the work, and that it's okay to have that personality to the point where it can be the difference, especially for a design leader like yourself. I feel like you do gravitate towards those things.
Well, because you're hiring for culture in the team too. And that's a really tricky one, because hiring for culture is also synonymous for like hiring for whiteness, right? So you have to be careful about defining culture. But for example, I don't hire assholes. So
Good rule.
because it just kills. Like, you can kill an entire design team with one person who thinks that like they need to be the star of the show. And so I do take a look for like, are you humble? How easily do you let go of your ideas? If I poke a little bit and kind of pressure and ask more questions, do I get a lot of defensiveness? Can we collaborate together as a team? I really think my role with my team members is very much about bringing out the best in them. And so we need to be operating from the place of like, you always know I've got your back and I'm your cheerleader. So if I come into an interview with someone where I feel like every time I ask them a question, I get this, kind of tightening, then I was like, okay, like that's going to be tough. And it's going to be hard for me to help this person. It's going to be hard for me to really support this person, because I'm going to have to cover so much ground to help them feel safe with me. And maybe they'll feel safe with me, but how are they going to act with other people in the organization when I'm not around? Like, I also think too about everybody's role as an ambassador for the organization too, and wanting to make sure that when you're having a meeting with your PM or your marketing manager, that like they walk away feeling excited to work with the design org, and they walk away feeling a little bit lighter and a little happier for having had a conversation with you.
I love that.
That's such a great point. I love that. Yeah. I think it doesn't always stand out on paper as well, maybe there's some signals that you might get that, but really it's in that conversation, right, that you start to get that sense of that person, and how confident and comfortable you would be seeing them interact with everyone else in the group without you in that meeting as well.
Right.
Yeah. That's a great point. I love that.
I wanted to ask a question. Melissa, for design leaders that are maybe less hands-on now when they're applying to roles, what would you recommend is the best way that they can showcase their maybe abilities, like their leadership skills in a website portfolio, like in a outreach? Is it a cover letter? Nobody reads those, but I don't know. Kind of a lot of times design leaders, they really are stuck. They don't, maybe the work that they could present is really their teamwork. So what would you say for that?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I have definitely struggled with it myself, and I still don't know that I've nailed it. But what I would say that I've tried is I talk a lot about my role as an enabler, and then I try and tell stories that prove that capacity. I also keep a folder just because I'm deeply insecure, just like the rest of us, called Nice Things People Say. And I screenshot every compliment that I get in Slack. And so it's a reference point for me if I'm just like having a rough day and I like need to go and remember that I'm not as awful as I am in my head right now. Like I can go and look at that. But it's also really, really great when it comes time to say like, hey, person who's thinking about making an extremely expensive and consequential choice in hiring a design leader, here are some other people I have worked with, and here are the ways they describe how it's been to work with me, so that it's not just me providing that. You can actually get kind of a more 360 perspective. And so I'll lay out a case study, and then I'll kind of say like, okay, this is it. And I also talk too about a little bit about operations. How do you set a team up to work really well together? It comes down to designing a meeting culture. I know, but it's true. Like
necessary.
As a design leader, if you are not able to be really connected, especially in a remote culture, like really connected with your team members, you'd be surprised at how much can happen in a few days. And nothing kills somebody's spirit faster than having worked really hard on something for several days and then meeting with you and having you go
one direction.
This is great, but I want you to change everything. And so it's kind of my job to prevent that from happening, right? Like I need to be looped in. I don't need to tell you what to do. I just need to know so I can give little nudges and make sure that there's not going to be something that shows up down the line that's going to get anybody into a position of feeling bummed out.
Got it.
I love that. It's forever collecting artifacts, aren't you? When you're a designer, you are grabbing shots of the work that you've done and making sure you're building your folio out that way. And then as a leader, screenshots of Slack props. Always collecting.
We all have them.
I need that folder.
It's
I'm gonna
nice.
make it.
Oh, we should all make that folder. That's a great idea. Little brag book.
You guys make it as well, and I'll make sure I can contribute to it too.
Okay, all right.
Send you
Well,
some things that
we'll pad each other's brag books.
That's actually a great idea. Oscar came home from school the other day with this little booklet that he and his class, he's in kindergarten, so this is like 5-year-olds, you have to understand, but each of them had made a friend book where they wrote little short stories about what they liked about the other person. And it's just like, we should do that more as a team, give each other little just reminders of, that's what it comes down to. At the end of the day, we don't know how much time we have, right? So you have to make the people that you're with, that's what matters, right? Is having a good time and being able to have fun and collaborate and solve cool problems. Yeah, it's down to that moment more than anything else, I think.
Yeah, and we actually incorporate that in our process when we're, closing a candidate or helping to close a candidate. We call it the warm fuzzy stage, where when we actually go and present the offer, we try to get as much warm fuzzies from the client as possible about that person, so that when we're making the offer, we have all these things to say about why the client wants them in particular. So something super personalized, like really specific. So the person feels really seen. And I think at the end of the day, it's like, I think that's a person's number one need, is to feel acknowledged and seen. And so when you see people take in this information, it's like they just glow. If you're on Zoom, like you can see it. If you're on the phone, you can just kind of hear it and sense it. That, they kind of puff up their feathers and they're like, yes, like they saw me. And it's such a wonderful, it's my favorite part of the process, honestly. And I think people just are so hungry for it, because I think, especially in today's culture, I think we get less and less of that. So I think it's really necessary.
There's so much about culture in our organizations. Now, we were just talking about this before we hopped on, and I promise I'm not going to give the entire decade history of the 70s. But our cultures are inherently, in a workplace, inherently competitive, much to our detriment. In fact, there's a lot of science that actually will tell you that a collaborative working engagement, including like in a school system. So imagine like you're in the school, and instead of thinking individually about your own grades or competing against other people for a spot as the valedictorian, you were given a grade as a group. Now, that's everybody hates group work, right? So I don't want to do that. What they found is actually when you do that is that the group maintains each other and they support one another. So they'll help the people who are struggling, they divide up responsibilities, and the group itself outperforms an individualist contributor 10 times. Like it's wild how much better the performance is when the group works together. But when you're in an organization where there's potentially a lot of layoffs and you're in kind of like a tumultuous environment or a lot of reorganizations, you're always kind of looking over your shoulder about like, you know, even my best friend could be like, threat's a really strong word, but like I think in our nervous system, it does feel that way, because you don't just lose your job, you lose your health insurance, you lose your community. And for some people, they lose their sense of purpose and meaning. So it can get really intense to like need to win an argument at work, and you go home at night and you're like, why am I still thinking about that meeting? And it does come down to this kind of constant, just low level anxiety that comes from the perpetual competition that we're always in with each other. So anything that you can do, whether it's meeting with a person and just throwing away whatever argument it is that you need to, like whatever thing it is you need to convince that person to do, just be like, okay, fine. Like whatever their version of the truth is real, because it is, right? Like yours is real and theirs is real, and many things can be true at the same time. But what I find is that it just reduces that feeling of like me versus them, reduces your stress, opens you up to good decision making and good collaboration, and it builds incredible relationships with everyone you work with, because just like you said, Joanne, every person feels seen when you work with them, and so they're much more likely to see you too, and for the two of you to end up with something that is both just like a better solution overall because it's coming from diverse perspectives. But you guys are going to go home at night and you're not going to feel so tired, you're not going to feel so angry. It's just, anyway.
I'm into it. I always, this kind of stuff does make me think of that classic saying, you know, be the change you want to see in some of this stuff. Like, I know at times we can all get really frustrated with our workplaces, and depending on your level within a company, how empowered are you to make these decisions? Maybe you're not a leader or just that type of thing. And it's like, but you can always be the change you want to see too. You can always start by being more collective, being more collaborative. You can, whether or not it's a directive from, you know, the leaders to do that or not, we as individuals always get that choice to do those things, you know, to be the change. So I've definitely pushed myself for a bit of that in the last couple of years here as well.
It's tough, but it makes a huge difference. And I see Nikki's in here. She's got imposter syndrome as a designer is real. Nikki, you're right, my friend, and it doesn't go away. But I think I would add, so I've spoken to 60 people. I've done 60 qualitative interviews for On Purpose to kind of inform it. Imposter syndrome is everywhere. And I think once we kind of can let go of the idea that we're the only one who feels that way, and instead can begin to feel compassion for someone else having that experience, it's just like people kind of melt. And like, you know, most people aren't sociopaths. not as many as Instagram wants us to think. And so we can meet people on that level and really create, I don't know, just like a better life, instead of constantly feeling like, is somebody watching me? What am I supposed to be doing? You know,
look busy, shuffle papers.
Exactly.
Get that TPS report on their desk by 8 a.m. the next day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, Taylor has a question. What do you think is the best way to stand out without using so much effort that it burns you out? What comes more naturally? Oh, sorry. There you go. Thank you.
Taylor, will you give us a little more color on that? Will you tell us, do you mean stand out in the job search? Do you mean stand out at work? What are you talking about?
I think Taylor is on the job search right now. So I believe
job search stuff.
That angle, applying, reaching out to people directly.
I think so. I don't know right now because I'm not in the throes of hiring or trying to do, and I just know it's really bad. I've spoken to a lot of people, and it's really, really tough out there, Taylor. So I feel for you, and I get where you're coming from, and it is important to preserve your sanity. Unconventional thought. The burnout piece may be a little bit more about not putting all your eggs in the basket of that recruiter's reply to your email and finding other ways where you can feel validated and seen and worthy in the other parts of your life. Maybe finding a place to volunteer for a little bit. There's lots of good causes that need help and effort. Getting a little side job somewhere. So you just like interacting with people and you have got a little money coming in, just anything that you can do to take down that kind of feeling of like, I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to refresh LinkedIn 5,000 times and hopefully like my future is at the top of the page. Like I've been there and that will burn you out. It will burn you out so fast. In terms of standing out, I don't know. Like, I think if I were in the job search right now, I would be trying to create a modular portfolio where I think about each project as kind of a version of a different set of skills. And I would be shuffling those like a pitch deck, basically. And I would be rewriting intros, but I wouldn't be rewriting more than an intro. I would be in doing a little bit of research. Maybe the roles that you're the most excited about, you do the most research for. Maybe the roles that you're not as excited about, you don't do quite as much research on. But, you don't need to go all in on every single thing, and find other things in your life that are going to give you some sense of feeling connected and feeling human, so that you're not always worried about, when a reply comes in.
Such a great point. Do you think with, you've been doing your research and I know it expands outside of design as well, a big part of that, but maybe over your time and your years being a design leader, working with a lot of designers, like, are there common themes that you think, Nikki mentioned imposter syndrome, other sort of themes that designers grapple with that you often see and you maybe have? Because I think many designers go through very similar things. And sometimes there's like practical ways to refill that cup to, whatever it might be. I don't know if you've seen some of that.
Alan, I'm sorry.
I'm laughing about it.
That was true before this though. But okay, so themes that I think are tough as a designer in particular. I do think like the biggest thing is that we make art for a living on some level. And so there is always an element of your personality that is tucked inside of the work. That's just hard. But that doesn't mean that your colleagues don't suffer from a similar feeling. Like imagine somebody spent a week on a spreadsheet and they're bringing in trying to make a strategic point and you poke a hole in it. Like that's going to feel bad too, right? Like we're all putting ourselves forward and we're all doing our best to display our talents and our capabilities with our colleagues at all times. But let's see, what else? I was going to say, Jared, will you tell me your question again?
It was just about some of your common themes, I think, that you see as a design leader that maybe you've coached designers through, maybe they've been designers on your team, maybe you've been noticing it in some of your research and interviewing, just themes and ways that designers, can navigate being a better version of a designer themselves at times.
Totally. Maybe the one that's the best to talk about is the one that's been kind of floating around here and there on like, design thinking is dead. And I think there's always been this feeling in the design community of like kind of like get us, we're like that we're outside the door. We'd like to come into the conference room. We have thoughts, and wanting to be taken seriously, and really struggling because our work is often not quite so quantitative in nature, and wanting to be sure that we're considered a stakeholder in the same light as like the head of growth. And that comes all the way down inside the organization. And I think that to me, like the thing that really like it comes down to in the end is like, you have to believe that your perspective is worthwhile no matter what anybody else says. And that is tough, but it is the only thing that fixes it. So I worked in a company once where the lead engineer, I don't know. I didn't do anything with this guy. Like, I'd only been at the company for like 2 weeks, but man, like he worked with somebody at some point who was not nice, and he was bringing that with him. And he was, I remember in one of our first one-on-ones, he kind of basically said, like, what you do doesn't matter, and what you're up to is kind of nonsense.
Interesting.
Okay, that's a great intro.
Validated.
Like, he wasn't even like massage it all that much. It was really like direct. And I was kind of like, I remember a version of me would have heard that and would have dug my heels in and been like, you don't know what you're talking about. This is so important. Here's a bunch of, and I don't know whether I'm just old or what.
Wise.
But I literally laughed and I was like, okay, cool. I don't know what happened to you. You're absolutely right. There's lots of ways to solve a problem. I have one way. You have one way. It seems like they hired me, so I guess bummer for you. But like he just didn't have any power. Like there's nothing for him to give me about whether I'm good at my job or whether my job is worthwhile. I know my job is worthwhile. I know what I do provides value. I know I'm a good contributor inside of an organization, and so I don't need him to like it or dislike it. It's kind of up to him, if he wants to get mad about it. And if you can let go of giving everybody else the ability to tell you that you're worthwhile, everything gets so much easier.
Yeah. And you were so smart to say, you're right. Like that was probably like totally defanged him, right? Like, he was probably like ready for a fight. Like it's probably what he wanted on some level. And the fact that you were just like, okay, dude, like,
sure.
That's probably, I mean, saying like, you're right, that's such a great way to like diffuse an argument or, a conflict. It's just like, hey, like, yes, you're valid. You're right. He was probably like, oh, okay. Like probably changed the entire timbre of the conversation.
No, we're friends now. That's the irony. Is like, it's like whatever it is, and whatever somebody's bringing to the table, it's got nothing to do with you. Unless you've been a problem and like there's no real reason. You guys have been at each other's throats, but it's usually from a bad experience. It's usually from their own insecurity. Like there's something else. And it really just isn't a reflection of who you are. And so as soon as you stop thinking that it is, God, the world opens up, and you can, what's cool about it is that you can then actually hear what they are saying, which what I heard from when he said that is, I'm afraid of you.
The change that could come.
And so what do I need to do? I need to make him feel less afraid. I need to make him feel safe, as a partner, as a colleague, not because I need to please him, but like, we're going to have to work together. So how do we get there?
I had a very kind of Buddhist meditative friend, also a design leader, say that when somebody came at him with anger, and this could be just like out on the street, I think he got like some crazy person on the bus was just coming at him really hard. And he said, if I treat that person like they're in pain, as opposed to they're being angry and they're mean or whatever else, because anger is basically like fear, right? It's just a different format. So if you treat them like they're in pain, it can completely transform that interaction. Because that's really where it's coming from. So it's like speaking to like where it is. Yeah.
And Alan's got another note in here that's like, it can be tough when you're getting that from cross-functional executives or other peers in the org. And it is true. It's really, really hard. And again, the way I've combated that is to just take it seriously and say, why? Why do you feel that way? Can you tell me more? And believing that whatever they're experiencing is valid and real, and then asking them to unpack it. First of all, their boundaries, like their shoulders come down, they get a little softer. It's like, oh, this person cares about what I think. Oh, that's interesting. And now you're kind of having a dialogue, right? And so within that, my role as a peer to someone is to support them. So I get to now learn. What can I do? How can I help you? Do I need to change my process a little bit? Did you need to know about something sooner? Okay, cool. We can make that work. And then immediately, you find that person becomes an advocate for you, that you find that person is really interested in helping you solve your own problems. And you build a better organization by just choosing to be as good of a listener with your colleagues as you are with your users.
Yeah, there's a famous story. I think it was Ben Franklin. He was not getting along with somebody in Congress back in the day. And he said, the way that I made friends with this person is that I asked to borrow one of their books, which I thought was really brilliant. He's like, now this person, like the person's probably just like, oh God, like I have to let you, have this book of mine. Okay. But said yes. But then all of a sudden they're in a relationship. right?
Mhm.
And the person
Ah,
feels like, oh, I did this person a mitzvah, like I gave this person like something of mine. So there becomes this closeness, like there is that emotional closeness that comes from that. I thought that was really interesting advice
mm,
Yeah, totally.
for what it's worth.
We've got Nikki and Gina in here asking about,
mm.
yeah,
Sorry, I'm covering
God,
up
that's a
people's
bummer.
faces.
I have been there. I know
Yeah.
what that feels like, and it's tough. Fails to understand and appreciate the importance of design. Um, in today's unpredictable job market as well. I mean, not to be a total broken record. I think there's two paths, right? The first is like you do the work to investigate and understand what is important. And why isn't this important? And see if there's things that you can change about the process of design. Again, like letting go of that ownership, if there's anything that you're doing that's contributing specifically to this feeling, or that there's something about you that is not good enough because that's not the truth. Figure out, see if you can understand the problem as best you can from their perspective. And then if you realize that you're working with someone who just genuinely does not care about what it is that you do and the value that you provide, then I think that is a moment to ask yourself, well, then what are you doing there? It may be time to find a different role. If there's not a way, it's tough to convince people to change their mind. What I have found is a better technique is to do your best to work with them in the space that they're in with the mindset that they have. And if that doesn't get you anywhere, then you're just working with something that you can't work with. And so you got to find somewhere else to work.
That's tough. I feel like some of this relates back to other things that you've discussed with us in the past around like chasing recognition as well, to an extent, that validation through the work. And I know that's not strictly what Nikki is specifically saying in this regard, but just in terms of like sometimes an attitude or a way to show up each day in ourselves, whether we're working or not working and on the job search. I think you have some really practical advice about that, which you have told us you've kind of learned the harder way, I feel like, by what did
Yeah.
you call it? Arrival fallacy, maybe?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Well,
Along these lines. Yeah.
if you'd like to read my blog, there's an entire post about this.
Yes.
No, so this is a scientific thing, right? You're new, you're in since out of college, you're gonna get that first job, and bing, dopamine hit, right? And like you do your first project, and your boss tells you, "Good job," bing, dopamine hit, and that's the little cycle that we're on. And culture says, "Okay, good, like you're going up." And you can go to cocktail parties and bars and people ask you what you do and you have a clear answer and that feels really good. And like the bigger the title, the more money you make, the nicer your outfit, like bing, dopamine hit, like all of those little things. But what I've found with almost everyone I've spoken to is that there is this thing that kind of underneath that of just like really looking for belonging and acceptance through that pursuit of career. And we kind of mistake that nice feeling of being told that we're doing a good job with like eventually reaching a place where we're going to finally feel safe and we can take a breath and we can be comfortable. And the thing about a job is that like it's a transactional contract. There is no guarantee that it will ever be safe. And I personally have climbed as high on that ladder as I really could go and didn't find anything that switched off the anxiety of making me feel like I was ever going to be safe. In fact, the further up I went, frankly, the more difficult my job became. And in many ways, like difficult, not just in like good, interesting, challenging ways, but like difficult in like really problematic, like burnout ways. And so that's good. They call it arrival fallacy. The feeling of getting an achievement and having that little dopamine hit and thinking like, this is it, I'm at the top of the world. And then you wake up the next morning and you feel just as anxious as you did the day before. And so it kind of comes back to like, if you give the job the ability to be your savior, it's never gonna, it can't save you. Like your job can't save your life.
Things away from you.
Yeah. So you have to save yourself and we have to save each other, right? We are not meant to be fully little individual businesses, competing with each other. We're communal creatures. So find people to connect with and find a way to have that feeling of connection and support outside of your workplace.
I love
And I
that.
think your own journey into design, you were alluding with us when we talked yesterday that it's a rather non-traditional path into design. So maybe that might be nice to share too, so people kind of see like, oh, it doesn't have to be this hamster wheel that like it has to be this way, or there's only one right way to do it. What was your own entrance into design?
I was terrible at it. Oh my God. I went to college and I loved art when I was in high school. I'm not going to be a serious person. I'm not going to do art. I'm going to study international business and French.
Ooh la la.
Ooh la la.
Got to school and I couldn't help myself. I just kept taking art classes. And so I took business classes on the side. So I have a business degree and an art degree, kind of to make both sides of myself happy, I guess. And you can ask my design professors, he'll tell you I was not the best student in the class, but there really wasn't anything else to do. I didn't know how to like be an artist, and it sounded kind of lonely. And a lot of those people cut off parts of their bodies. So like, it seems
Into that.
better to go somewhere else.
No? Okay.
But I had a lot of qualms with commercial art. I mean, like women in particular are not friends in advertising. And it's not been a good field for us. And so I really I kind of held my nose and got in. And then I think I was lucky because when my career started, the industry was switching gears and product design was kind of becoming a thing. And so I was able to kind of maneuver. But I still hear from the folks that I mentor now, like, what's that one right way? Like, I want to do it the right way. I want to check all the boxes. And there's just not one. Like, we're making it up. Everybody is making it up. This industry has not been around that long in comparison to pretty much everything else, and it is changing at light speed. There is no answer to that. The only thing you can do is draw on your own unique perspective and life experience, because those are the things that you do bring that are specific to who you are. You're the only person who's lived your life. You're the only person who's had the experiences that you've had. And so find a way to knit that stuff together into something that you really enjoy doing. First of all, you have to like it at least a little bit. And then, see if you can sell it to someone else to get them to pay you for it. And that's kind of the best you can hope for.
That still sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah.
It's good. You've gotten Joanne thinking. She's pondering now.
I know. You got me thinking. I have nothing to say to it. I'm just soaking it in. It was great.
I appreciate it. What maybe you could tell us a little bit about On Purpose as well, and if people are interested in that, because a lot of, I feel like what you're talking about is it's information and sentiments and things that's really shared on Purpose. You are a phenomenal designer, but On Purpose is not just about design specifically too. It's for anyone really. Yeah.
Thanks for the layup, Jared. So it's a Substack, and like I said, last year, I've been thinking about doing this really since the pandemic started, and I was just like kind of looking around. I was like, we have just kind of gotten it wrong with like what we think is important in life, and I wanted to understand why. Because I'll tell you, I left a job where I was so stressed out and I was so nervous. I was so worried all the time. And then I took that toxic behavior and I pumped it into my own business. And so you have to have that moment of being like, oh, like I'm the problem. It's me. And I wanted to know where my mindset had shifted gears. Like the thing I find so much, and in our work, we have this incredible opportunity to learn from people all the time. But we all know, in qualitative research, you listen to someone and they're kind of telling you a story. They're telling you a story about what they believe to be true about their world and their role in it. And that story is true or it's not true. But for them, it's 100% real. And we all have that. I had that. And I wanted to know what were the different beliefs that I had internalized over the course of my career that had left me in this kind of perpetual like productivity, like achievement loop that had no end. And so I've conducted about 60 qualitative interviews so far, just asking folks, what's your definition of success? Tell me about your career path, how you made choices, to begin to break down what it looks like to be in a healthy relationship with work, and what it starts to look like when your relationship with work is challenging. The kind of core insight underneath all of it is really, it does kind of come back to your ability to know what you want, and kind of your ability to, like, the healthiest participants in my study, almost all of them, what they're most afraid of is being miserable. My least healthy participants are most afraid of being inconsequential, most afraid of surviving. And look, we're all afraid of surviving. It's not to say that that is not true, but when that feeling of needing to literally, like, it's like that animal feeling of like making it, in the world becomes your dominant experience, you make really different decisions. And you choose things that are more aligned with staying safe, which may often mean having poor boundaries, right? So that can look like saying yes to everything that your boss asks. It can look like prioritizing the mission of a company because you've internalized that mission as your vocation on earth. I've got a lot of people I've talked to that seem to have confused their boss with God. There's just like a lot of, and like, look, we live in a theocratic country. Like that's not that surprising. Like we're, cowboy myth, Puritan myth, all that stuff comes together. So anyway, each week I release a different piece that either involves an interview with someone that I've spoken with and a series of kind of, I try to flesh it out with like, this is kind of what's happening. And like, these are psychological principles. I was boring everyone on this call about the 70s before we got on. The advent of neoliberalism in the problematic workplace. So if you sign up today, you too can receive this in your inbox every Tuesday. But yeah, I'm doing that, and I'm also taking coaching clients as well. So if you're feeling really stuck and you're having a hard time listening to that inner voice, and you want a partner that can collaborate with you and kind of help you tune better into the things that give you joy and the things that make you feel alive and make you feel happy. That's something that I've been doing too. And it's incredible fun to get to, it's a real honor, honestly, like to get to do that work with people. It's very cool.
And I will say I've been a recipient of that coaching. So I am a very happy customer. You're so fantastic, Melissa. I mean, with everything that you do, but the coaching was just, you allow someone to get really vulnerable really fast because you're bringing this level of vulnerability and openness too. And I think we can all agree that in this talk today, you've really brought so much of yourself. You've really set just such a beautiful standard for other people to be open and vulnerable too. And I think that's just a beautiful quality that you have. And you really helped me. I've got this creative life that I have, and then I've got the business life. And you really helped me combine the two and to kind of let my freak flag fly, but still do this at the same time. And I just really want to say thanks, and that I appreciate that so much, and work with her, everybody who's out there.
It's an incredible.
Great. I feel great. I feel like this was like a little bit of a therapy session, honestly. Like I feel like lighter.
Every chat with Melissa is almost like that.
Yeah.
In a great way. A really great way.
Yeah.
I needed that.
Yeah.
I love that so much of this it applies to absolutely anyone, but I know that a lot of this audience is more from the design background. It applies extra to a designer, I think, at times, because that is the role of the designer. But your background, your experiences as a design leader, I know how much you have to offer from a first person experience of navigating this stuff. You've been in some serious trenches, but then ridden some big clouds. I love all that. So I cannot, also speak highly enough of any designer wanting to connect with yourself about the coaching, signing up to On Purpose to receive those mounts, and the community aspects, I think, are definitely worth mentioning there too. I know you run certain sessions and events, but just being part of that community together. In this current market at times, whether you're in a role that you're feeling a bit stuck, you're in a search and feeling stuck, like nothing beats community.
100%.
I think you would know that even better through the research, but I cannot recommend that stuff enough as well.
Thank you, Jared. No, it's cool. We do a salon every 4 or 6 weeks. I get a different guest. We had an award-winning artist come and give us a drawing lesson last week and talk to us about how she tells capitalism to fuck right off. So
excellent. Yes.
It's good. Come join us. We're having a lot of fun over there. It's great. I know it's tough out there. We all need a light.
Is this live or is this on Zoom?
They're live every, like, I think it's usually about every 6 weeks, I think. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. But like, if you're in the email list, you'll get the note. And then every 6 Fridays or so, and come together.
Cool. It's somewhere in New York City.
It's on Zoom. It's on
no,
Zoom.
no, it's on Zoom.
Oh, it's on Zoom. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it runs live in the moment, not pre-recorded.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Live
Like this today. It's a stream.
Cool. Well, looks like we're at time, so I think we should probably close. But Melissa, thanks again so much for being here. And Jared and Erica, it's always so fun to co-host with you guys. So yay.
Yes.
And thanks to everybody who joined and asked questions. And we'll post this. Jared actually will post this, and we'll read it so people can watch it at their own convenience. But thanks again, Melissa. You are incredible, and we're so honored to have you here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Me too.
Links to the Substack will be anywhere I share this. I'll pop that in there. Also, Melissa's on LinkedIn. It's also one way to reach out to yourself. Thank you. We will be back, but we're going to have a bit of a break. I think our next session, we've got some delays coming up. We've got config coming up. We've got some travel, but what a way to kind of round out our month with Melissa Cullens here. So
summertime, y'all. Enjoy your break. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Bye, everyone.
End stream. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Bye.